Hi, and welcome to Together, the #1 podcast that explores the terrain of sacred relationship, what it is, and how to embody it in your day-to-day life, so that you can take that relationship that is already filled with love and deepen it even more in the felt sense of intimacy. In today's episode, we're going to be interviewing a beautiful couple that we define as elders, Robin Temple and Michael Moore. They co-founded a company called Couple Solutions. They have over 70 years of combined experience supporting couples. And for Courtney and I, it's always an honor to interview elders, especially in our field of work, that are decades ahead of us when it comes to putting in the time. And what a gift to have a conversation with the generation before us. Something that you'll experience when you start listening to Michael and Robin is that they are so genuine, loving, caring, and kind. And this is after 30 years of being together. You can really feel in the essence of what they share and talk about that they live it, they breathe it, what it takes to be in right relationship with each other. And it's really beautiful. And something that I could really get a taste of when talking with them was they've really figured out how to welcome each other's differences and find their right relationship of polarity. Waving, both of them uniquely waving in and out of the masculine and feminine qualities that we all carry, them finding their unique balance of that. And what a gift to feel that. So in today's episode, what you're going to learn is, the wounds of the masculine, where they come from and how they show up in relationships, the feminine's deep longing for safety, presence, and emotional leadership, and the misconceptions about vulnerability that keep men from true connection, and how men can lead with heart without losing strength. Hello, Robin and Michael. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So where we'd love to start is just hearing a little bit about who you guys are and what you do in the world.
Actually, before we answer that question, I just want to take a moment to appreciate the two of you. The combination of your obviously sophisticated understanding of emotional realities, communication realities, just the whole terrain of trying to relate to another partner, coupled with what I perceive as your beginner mind, like you're always showing up like this is a new thing. And I just love that combination. So I just want to appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that you're here to really support couples in deepening ongoingly their love and intimacy. That's something we all need. That support.
So much so. And I wanted to hear your intro, and just in response to that, like, we're so excited to have you both here. And just as we were kind of connecting a little bit before this episode, I love to feel the connection between you two, the love that is there, especially hearing that it's been 30 years of journeying together. And we're just really excited to hear more of, the relationship, your journey.
Yeah. And it means a lot to get that reflection and witnessing from an elder couple that is reflecting that to us. It's nice to be seen.
Yeah, what a gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, since we're on the, let me just appreciate you as parents. We are grandparents, and from this perspective, my gratitude and appreciation for parents, it's boundless. Uh, Good people are raising the next generation of children just gives me a lot of hope for where we're going to end up.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's
yes.
big work.
It's big.
Yeah, and being able to do that work in a container of relationship where you are on the journey and you are cultivating love it's big work. It's a lot of devotion, and I feel like that's such big ripples in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and our work
Journey.
with couples, I mean, just the bridge is, for me, in my mind, one of my primary missions when we're working with couples is I'm doing this for their kids.
mm,
And we don't work directly with people's children, but in my mind, that's a
Sure.
big part of what we're doing.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
In fact, that's what led me to become. I was a psychotherapist for a long time, and then about 35 years ago or so, I was a crisis interventionist for kids in the high school. And, I love to try to help them, but how much I could help them was so limited if I couldn't get to the parents, and that's when I decided to go back to school and really focus on understanding families. Happened to coincide with my divorce from my first marriage.
Mm.
So, after 10 years of marriage and three children, I ended up with so many questions about like, what is it that goes wrong with two people that love each other, that build a family together? And how is it that we end up with such, heartache and disappointment and alienation? I just had so many questions. So, all of that kind of started me on this path of wanting to understand intimate relationships and how to make them thrive and grow over time. And there's so much I didn't know then that was part of the journey, to get here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're both
Beautiful.
we're both it's a second marriage for both of us, and we've both been through that divorce and that heartache. And but we met at really different points in that journey. I was more newly divorced and single parenting, and
I'd been happily single for a decade at that point.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah, beautiful. And so you guys have been together for 30 years. My understanding of you and your work, you support couples, you support individuals. Why don't you share a little bit more of like how you support people?
Mhm.
well, I'm a private couples counselor, but really what we found over the last 30 years, and we can share more about how we got here, but we would love to work together in experiential programs for couples. And we find that psychoeducation is so much more powerful and groups, people were learning together.
Mm,
So we teach retreats and programs in person and online for couples.
Mm.
And we've
beautiful.
developed that.
Well, let's mention how we got started.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear where you met, what was going on in your lives when you met. When did Robin and Michael become a unit?
Well, that was a long journey, really, from the time we first met, um, and then when we had a really deep and passionate attraction. But I was in another marriage, and Michael was in his happy single life, and so was a lot of caring about each other, but not seeing any chance for us being a couple. So that kind of came together over time. Uh,
That was her perspective. I confess that I I was smitten by Robin from the very first time I saw her. And so anyway, while I was happy to have the opportunity to have a platonic friendship with this amazing person. I confess, I hoped for more right from the start.
You
Yeah.
could feel it. You could
Yeah.
feel it. You could feel the magic, hey, the energy there.
Yeah, and what did
Yes.
that look yeah. What did that look like when you guys came together?
Well, yeah, it was about 5 years later, and it was, there'd been so much going on in my personal life and with my children, then that we had been in a very, dealing with loss and grief around divorce and restarting our lives together. And then I had this, like wonderful connection with this person, but I couldn't see any way how we could blend our lives together, given all of that. And then one summer, Michael just sold his house, and I had moved into a new place that had some extra space. So we thought, oh, well, we'll just try it for the summer. Just let you move in for a few months. Let's just see how we can, overlap with our families.
And so I was convinced this was going to be the most epic love affair ever. I was so excited and thrilled to be moving in together with all our kids. Owned a surveying and engineering company that I had just sold. So I was in a great place. My life rocked. And so we moved in with our kids. It was all going to be so great. And immediately it was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It was
Oh.
such a shocking disappointment to discover that, because as friends, it was easy to imagine that she was just going to be perfect in every way. And
Totally classic.
in terms of living together, it was terrible. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, one example being the kitchen counters. Like I'm the one who does most of the food prep in our relationship. So for me, that needs to be a blank slate, and for Robin, it's kind of like where the kids' homework lives, where the phone messages are, the dry cleaning,
The
the
dry clean. It's like the command central, the starship.
Starship Enterprise, right? Exactly,
Yeah.
the bridge of the starship. So anyway, it was not going well. And the hardest part was we had a really sharp difference around parenting that we didn't see coming. Um, Robin's founder of the local Waldorf school. So what'd you say a little about
Well, our focus has been very much about protecting the innocence and the imagination and really allowing children to feel safe and nurtured and as long as possible, like protecting that sacred place for
We're
children.
really informed by the Waldorf way, and so that really
Mhm.
yes?
for us. Yeah,
Creativity, yeah.
yeah.
I was raised in a very different environment where the whole Midwestern ideal with children was raise them to be self-reliant, raise
Um,
them to be competent adults. Like that's the most important thing. And we were incredibly threatened by that difference, and it was not going well. Now, eventually, what we discovered, certainly with the grandkids, is the truth is kids need both things.
Right.
and,
yeah.
and and if you can bring both, uh, then that's perfect. But we weren't seeing that at the time. It
Hmm.
was like an either or, and it was like a big fight. And it just seemed impossible. Like we really were not going to be able to stay together, which was horrible after we had put all our kids through these changes. And it was really a rough time. And I was in a lot of turmoil. And then a tragedy occurred. Um, do you want to?
No, you go.
Okay. Um, Robin's middle child was kind of a golden child, like super athlete, always running with a pack of boys. 10-year-old um, was a driver did something crazy and ran over him on his bike and killed him.
Oh.
And we just went into a really dark place for a couple of years, really. And
Well,
Robin, to my mind, wherever our son Justin went, she went there too. She was like gone in terms of here. And so,
well, and I remember thinking, um, in those days when we were saying goodbye to him, I remember thinking, it occurred to me, like, like, oh, it's over with Michael. Like, there's no way in the world he's going to stick around for this. Like, why
Mm.
should he? Like, it wasn't working anyway. And this is like, so that was just it's kind of registering for me as another loss. And and then I remember a couple weeks later, my sister who'd been staying with us was leaving, and I overheard him talking to her in the little hallway. I was in the kitchen, and I heard him say, "Don't worry, I'm going to stay and take care of them."
Mm.
And I
Mm.
was, I guess, couldn't have been more shocked or surprised. I was just like, he is, that, that was just unimaginable, unfathomable to me why someone would want to lean in to a situation of this much hurt.
Mhm.
well, um, you know, right from the start, I just faced a moment of truth, and it was clear to me that leaving wasn't an option if I wanted to maintain any shred of self-esteem for the rest of my life. That it was time to show up, and those were really, really difficult days. It was by far the most difficult emotional experience I've been through, and I'm next to someone who's going through something a lot worse.
Mm.
And the kids.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, it's upsetting, I know, for
Yeah,
anybody
that's
to
a big
consider.
thing. Yeah, it's so big.
No,
So,
And
but it's a gift too to feel it
yeah,
because um these are the places of that are real, that are life, right? These are the things that happen.
yeah.
And
When
this is also where relationship can either hold us or not. But when we
well,
can show up relationally, like that it can help us move through those places in a powerful way, you know?
and just to
It
name the
ended up
yeah, and just to name the way that we see this is relationship really is this gift of initiating us into higher states of awakening
Yeah.
by if we can feel it deeply, let it touch our hearts and then mobilize what I can hear for you, Michael, there is where it brought you into a deeper sense of responsibility of like, I'm gonna show up for this. I'm gonna love these kids. I'm gonna, love Robin and like yeah, what a gift.
A commitment. I'm hearing that energy of commitment in that moment. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd like to say that, I was magnificent and wonderful in that role, and I wasn't. I really, um, we were all deeply traumatized. The kids, obviously, siblings had huge needs, and we were way under resourced to meet those. Robin's tendencies towards,
protection.
protection of her kids got, as you can imagine, that so the split we had around parenting just got a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
Um, and and there were no goodies. The kind of joy and happiness and positive things that really bind a relationship over time were kind of missing for a while. Like really not, there weren't happy times. Um, and so it was a struggle. And the first year was hell, and then the second year was a little bit better. And so it was kind of there, and we're in a big struggle. And Robin and I have always been really passionate about each other. We've always had a fiery, hot relationship, both in the in the really wonderful parts of that, and also in having, especially when we were younger, a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, you're
And
like us. Mike and I always say we're warrior people. So it's like
volatile relationship.
so it means there's lots of fire in good ways, and then also we're not the like we'll just quietly drift apart from each other. It's more of the like
Boom. Big feelings. We're gonna talk about feel this now, and yeah, passion comes.
Passion. Yeah.
Yeah, when there's passion, it's exciting, and it also can be edgy and
yeah,
scary, and
yeah.
About 20 years ago, we did this little mandala of our relationship. I don't know if you'll have to edit this, but the we had 3 keys to our relationship: fighting, fucking, and frolicking.
Nice. Nice. That's
yeah,
great.
love it.
That was
It's the warrior's way.
Oh, whoops.
so,
But that's okay. I'll get it.
you good?
And so what
Yeah.
was
Can I just say a little I just want to orient to the listeners to, how big this place you moved through as a couple, because, I used to work with families whose children were dying and had afterwards who had died. And it's
Mm.
very common that that's when people end up getting divorced. That's when they end up moving really far away from each other. But also, I just want to name that I did watch going through that with so many families, that the ones where there was a relational commitment and they could find their way through, it helped them come into like integrate the loss in a different way. It was almost like the relationship itself helped them do that. So I just want to name that this is big. This is big terrain you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, just to have someone else there in the home who was being this steady rock for us, and we were all over the place, and I wasn't even sure like what my life wanting to be alive, other than
Yeah.
I'm no Christian, I'm here, but what will it look like? And have
Yeah.
someone who would hold me at night, no matter how I was feeling, and help like ground me, bring me back into my body, into this earth, and create routines in the day, and those kinds of things made all the difference. So we were slowly kind of, coming back to, um, trying to accept the new life that was here. And I just felt like this, it's just going to be a gradual process. But then you really surprised me.
Well, so then after a couple of years, name what happened next, where you decided to go off and get some training.
Yeah. So anyway, as I kind of, well, here's what I was thinking first.
Yes.
We should do a different story,
Okay.
which is about getting married. So about decide. I mean, that's what the
Deciding to
big
get married.
surprise.
Okay.
That was the
All right.
big surprise. And that then we'll talk about the
How we
next
got
week.
into being couples leaders.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd love to
well,
hear that. And if I can, I just want to hear, you named a few there, Robin, and this is just gold here, is what really helped you was the like structure, having someone there. And I'd love to hear, were there any more pieces in there that really helped you kind of move through that experience of grieving, like grieving a really big loss, like Michael, you grieving too, and like naming like that's like what were the pieces that got you to the place that's now going to segue us into the marriage? Like what went from things not being so hot and oh my god, this really isn't working? Like what emerged in that time?
Well, it wasn't really time to be working on our relationship. Like it wasn't that I wasn't resourced enough for that.
Mhm.
That came in heavy once we decided to to move forward together. Then we really dove into that. It was more about just trying to stabilize my nervous system and this life with, and be there for our children, all of whom were suffering. And I think the key during that time was, well, first of all, extraordinary amount of community, friends, family support and care. Um, just absolutely inundated, with love and care.
Mhm.
I remember going
Mm.
to the mailbox. That's the days we used to have mail every day and receiving these cards and notes and care and love and
Well,
flowers.
well, let me just add, it was the first time I understood that grace can show up in the middle of tragedy and actually be
Yeah.
amplified by it. And we certainly had that experience. Like
Yeah. We
the
were
depth,
carried.
the depth of love and support was extraordinary.
Mm.
And felt wonderful. So it's like this weird juxtaposition in the middle of all this horror to have like such grace and such beauty and that joy, I would even name, show up in our lives. It was,
Yeah, we were like being carried,
yeah.
as
Mm.
a family. And the Waldorf school, I mean, what it provided for our children, it was just extraordinary, that community of care and love and support. Um, that gave them a place to be held and loved, out beyond what we could provide. That was so important. So yeah, we had so much help. And, therapy, grief groups, all of that. But time, so much of it is time to see that things can gradually improve and heal. Um, when we can't see how, so yeah, grace is a great answer to that, but having him be there for that, was incredibly bonding and built so much trust from me that, oh
Mhm.
my god, I can be so unavailable, so lost, and so much pain, and he's here, he's still here.
Well, and I came to understand that part of the key is you just have to dive into it. And Robin did that, and my respect and admiration for the fact that she's not only a whole person, um, despite that experience, but there's a way in which she's found the gift
Mhm.
in something none of us would ever want, but there is a gift there of
Mhm.
compassion, of understanding for other people, uh, just a depth to her from that experience. I'm a little different about that. In tragedy, what I tend to do is buck up and be the strong man and stuff my feelings for the moment. And then, I do that kind of processing much later, which I have to say is functional in the system, but for me as an individual,
Mhm.
probably not the best approach. But
Right.
Mm.
eventually I got my work done too.
Right. Yeah.
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 And I'm curious there, Michael, was there something I can hear where you really let yourself feel Robin as she was in this big descent of that experience? Was there you feeling her and witnessing her in that? Did that awaken or initiate something in you where you maybe moved into a higher state of maturity? Is the words that I would use, but is there something where her really letting the experience touch her, did that
Mm.
activate you
I
into
don't,
something?
I mean, it's all part of who I am. It's
Mm,
hard for me to label any part of that experience as anything other than survival, honestly.
Mhm.
right.
Um, I remember there was one moment we're laying in bed together, and this is, I don't know, a month or so afterwards, and Robin shook,
Mhm.
did this big shaking. And I'm like, what? What is going on?
Mhm.
And she said, oh, I had a moment where I wasn't thinking about him.
Mhm.
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm.
Mm. And, that's, I went, oh boy, this is going to be a while.
Yeah. A huge
This is
journey.
Oh,
Yeah.
nothing's going to happen fast here.
No.
yeah.
And in fact, that Robin was basically whole and fully functional again after a couple of years. And from this
Yeah.
perspective, I think was incredibly fast.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
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 One
Some
that has
parents
this.
never
Yeah.
make it out
Yeah.
of the grief, like the
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that had also everything to do with you continuing to lean in,
Mhm.
to be there.
So,
So tell them about that story.
so I was in this training program where I had a personal coach, and we would fly off to Chicago for these training weekends once a month. And so I'm there, and my coach knew this whole story. So, she was she basically had wanted to have a whole conversation with me about my relationship with Robin, which wasn't the purpose of her being my coach. So I was a little taken aback, but okay. And anyway, long story short, the gist of her coaching was, when are you going to ask her to marry you?
Mm.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, you know, this is like way outside what we're supposed to be doing. And, and then she whips out her date timer and goes, okay, give me a date. And I'm like, oh man. Well, anyway, so part of the program was really accepting the coaching. So I'm like, all right, I know I'm going to ask her sometime a year from now. So she wrote it down in her book. So then later I'm flying home from Chicago, and I'm on the plane, and I'm just thinking about this. And I realize, well, I really do see this as our future. And if that's true, then why wait? And so I ended up talking myself into it by the time the plane landed in Denver. So I got home. Robin's busy. She's doing something. I'm like, hey, I really need you to pay attention to me. So I finally got her.
Yeah. Watch it, got to make lunch.
So I finally got her to sit down on the couch. And, I hadn't had time to get a ring or anything, but I got down on one knee, did the knee thing, and just asked her if she'd marry me. And she looked at me, kind of shocked, fell off the couch, and said, "Are you possessed?"
Nice.
Not the super romantic like moment I had envisioned.
Oh, I couldn't have been more shocked. I mean, it was one thing that he'd been in there to help us through this transition. And this is now a year and a half, not quite 2 years after he died. But I just figured, like, anyway, but I just never had any sense that, nor did I have a sense of my own future, much less that he would want to be a part of that, really. We were just still day to day. So yeah, I was pretty shocked and amazed, really. And it took me a little while to really live into that, because I realized saying yes to that meant saying yes to being alive, fully
Yeah.
passionate human being, like showing up for the future in a wholehearted way. And I felt like I was still just clawing my way back, But we did finally say yeah. I did say yes and set a date.
She
Like,
made me wait for a long time for an answer. It was really uncomfortable.
well, we set a date like a year later, and that was the Independence Day
Right.
date. Yeah. And so that
Can
was,
I can
and
I
it
just
took me.
speak to something just there quick is it's interesting because there's lots of cultures where they will actually intentionally, after there's been a big tragedy, have some sort of, that's when afterwards you have a wedding in the village, that's when you have some sort of celebration, because it helps balance, there's like the ending and then and we actually know of another couple that had that happen, a son die, and then a year and a half, 2 years later, ended up and being in that energy of, why are we getting married right now, but also, oh, this is part of the balancing, the committing. So I just wanted to just reflect that
Oh,
back, that I hear the wisdom, like life's wisdom, working through you. Yeah.
yeah. How beautiful to hear that someone else said that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, it called me back, it really called me back. and it took every day of that year to get there. But that was my commitment, to him and to our family and to life, that I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
We're gonna get through this, we're gonna get through this together.
Mm.
So yeah, so then it became time to say, all right, how are we gonna get along? Because we still have all these hassles. And yeah, that's when and I was in that process of deciding to really understand and work with families and couples for myself. So decided to invest in what was the most comprehensive and effective program on intimate relationship skills for couples that time, called
Mm.
Pairs.
Mm.
And decided that, all right, I'm going to go off for this training and really dive into, much more than I was getting in graduate school, to really dive into what does it really take. This time, I want to know, I want to understand my part, which I was pretty blind to in my first marriage. And I want to know that this is going to really thrive. We're going to thrive together.
So she announces to me that she's going off for the first of 3 8-day trainings on the topic of intimate relationships. I was horrified. Here's why. Robin, as a therapist, had always had so many great ideas for me about how I could be a better partner.
Yes. Yes, totally.
And the fact that she was largely correct didn't make it any easier to listen to. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going to come back with 24 more days
Mm.
of tune ups for me. Bummer. So I got busy researching this organization, trying to dig up some dirt, figure out why this is not a good idea. And in the process, got kind of intrigued by what I was seeing. It was interesting, and discovered that partners of trainees could go with them
Mhm.
and audit the training. So I'm like, okay, at least I'll get it firsthand and she won't have to be training me personally. So last minute decision, we're on the plane, the East Coast. We end up the next day in the training room. And there's authors there, well-known people. This is one of the early training groups, and I'm the only non-therapist in the room. And so early on, Dr. Gordon says, oh, this is going to be such a great training. This is so great. We have an actual couple here. So, Mike, you and Robin can model all the tools as we learn them, and that'll make it
Nice.
a much better training experience for all of us. And I'm like, oh, shit. I remember, I think it was that first day in the afternoon, we're sitting there in the middle of the room. I got sweat dripping down my back and, trying to be a little gallant. I offered Robin the floor to work out an issue because we were learning a tool for doing that. And she picks parenting.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
great. All these therapists will definitely hate me by the end of the day. And so she launches into this thing, and then I got to respond with my own perspective. And for the first time in all our just hot hassles and sense of threat with each other, I felt really heard and received. And not like she necessarily agreed with me, but that she respected my perspective and that it was coming from love. It wasn't just me being a jerk or an ass. And that was huge to just feel received. And anyway, by the end of the 8 days, and I had sold my surveying and engineering company. I was looking for what was next, and I'm like, okay, let's do this thing.
Mm.
Mhm.
And so we both jumped in. I was one of only, I think, two non-therapists who actually became master teachers in that program,
Mm.
and you know, never looked back. After we helped with curriculum development there, and then we kept taking new programs, learning more stuff, and eventually just realized we just needed to have the freedom to create our own uh, training using the very best of what we had found in all these different areas. And so,
And using what we keep learning in our differences and how we
and
can create a life together.
and honestly, without that, I think the odds of us having been able to stay together over the long run, probably not very good. Uh, and so, we've been part of the blessing in being teachers is it's forced us to continuously pour ourselves into what works, what actually works, what's not just a good idea, but what's a practical, usable tool that will actually help us get through this. And
Well,
we've had a
and
lot.
sorry. Well, I loved what you were saying earlier about before we started recording where you actually named, you said we're not compatible. Like it sounds like at times you actually felt like you weren't compatible and it wasn't going to work. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Are you familiar with the Myers-Briggs?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm an ISTJ, she's an ENFP. So that's
Okay.
one answer to the
Yes.
question. We come
Yeah.
at the world from really different perspectives. And often when we try and talk to each other, it's like a foreign language.
An engineer, therapist, then there's the male brain and the female brain and
Well,
Yeah.
all that going against
so
us.
after the children, some of the worst fights we've ever had were driving in the car to go teach a couples class
Right. Yeah.
and just being in this hot fight about because we were starting out and it was mostly our friends and family, so we were super invested in it being great. And I'm trying to engineer this thing, she's trying to run a therapy group, and we felt so threatened by each other. And I'm not kidding, we would have these horrible fights like driving up to teach the class. And it
And
turned
it'd be
out
like, okay, I'm not teaching, you do it.
you do it. If you
You
think
do
it's
it.
got to be, I'm like, you do it. I'm out of here. And and it worked out great because we were teaching them conflict resolution tools, and we would just go in and use one of the tools and sort ourselves out in front of the group. And
Yeah.
and anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, I had no model growing up of how to work with anger, with hot differences, um, in my family. Like no one ever raised their voice. And when bad things happened, which there was terrible, different struggles that my parents were having, that was all behind closed doors.
Mhm.
I mean, the only things I remember hearing in the middle of the night was something terrible is going to happen, that my mom's going to go leave home and, leave the
Mm.
marriage. But no, in the daytime, everyone's happy and sweet and loving and everything. So confusing. So I had no skills. And that's a lot of what went wrong in my first marriage. I didn't understand anything about what I wanted and needed, much less have the tools and the skills to be able to set boundaries and ask for that and go dive into the differences. And they just accumulated and buried and then grew broader, huger and huger gulf between us. I didn't know. And so, this time when the differences are showing up and I'm much more in touch with my anger and frustration, but I didn't have any tools for how to resolve that and work through that together. So, that's was the huge shift for me in the training that we did initially, is being able to learn how to articulate and ask for and advocate for what I need and want in a way that is respectful and of our differences, and be able to do that in a way that's bringing him into my world versus me separating from his world, so that we
Mhm.
could combine, we could start to work together on
Mhm.
on combining and learning from each other.
I
So
love what you're speaking to there, around I just wanna name that this piece of you're really naming the things that are just a part of relationship. But when we haven't seen healthy relationship, when we haven't been modeled healthy relationship, it's amazing how many couples will come in and they'll be reporting these things as the reason that the relationship isn't working. But so often they're actually naming things that are just a part of relationship. Like that just is a part of relationship. And it's not that that's happening that's the problem. It's that you're not knowing how to allow that, how to be with that, how to it's a very classic thing that people come in and well, we have such a different opinion about that. Or, I love how you're talking about the parenting one, because that one comes up all the time when we're working with couples is that, the dad sees it more like this and the mom sees it more like that. And they're like, we're not on the same page at all with parenting. But how that's actually very, very common. And that place, I love what you're saying here. It's not so much that the difference is the problem, but it's the how are we hearing each other and making space for that. And like the tools. Yeah.
Which
yeah,
I'd love
'cause
to hear more about is like what those practical pieces are that you've learned, that you've been living,
Mhm.
that allows the difference to be there. And I heard words like respect and care. Like, how does that look now, 30 years later? What are the
Mhm.
pieces that have really worked in establishing intimacy and closeness in the difference?
Mm.
Yeah, I had a lot to learn in that regard rather than just thinking I knew better
Mhm.
and trying to take the high moral higher road and things and put subtly putting him down. Um and people get into power struggles. So yeah, I'll say something about the tools, but I think even behind that is what I've learned through these tools and being able to actually listen. Um, that there's so much about this difference. Opposites attract. We see strengths in the other person that are undeveloped in us. And the more intense that is, the more growth and possibility there is for me to become more whole and to start to, and now 30 years later, I can say so many of the things that are challenging for me about our personality differences are the actual other side of the coin of what's so incredibly wonderful and unique about this person who's my black belt master teacher in
Yes.
being able to grow myself and to dismiss parts of who he is means to dismiss all of who he is, that they're just there's so much to love when we can see it that way. So anyway, back to the tools. um so first of all, and I mean we could talk for hours about this, but first of all, there's a couple things. One is you've got to ask for, is it a good time?
Mhm. Yes.
Are you open to listening? Because otherwise, forget it. We're just going to launch in with something in the middle of a stressful day. Don't
Mhm.
expect it's going to turn out. So we have to have those
Mhm.
intentional times, which for a lot of couples,
Put the
parents,
phone down,
well,
Mhm.
get present,
and like
like
parents like yourself, like that's a big deal. How are we going to carve time to really listen to each other? I understand, like it's easier said than done. And yet,
Mhm.
unless we do, it's going to really build and amplify. And so that's, like that's challenge number one, create that time for intentional connection. And it's never harder than it is when you're raising young kids and both working.
Mhm.
Um, and then, taking turns. You have to take turns being the speaker and the listener. And it's important to know the listener's job is to listen with the intent to learn, to
Mhm.
understand what's going on in this person's world, which means getting my whole agenda and perspective uh, on the shelf.
what both people are trying to get their need for understanding into the same space at the same time. It never turns out. You really
No
have to
one's
take
listening.
turns.
Yeah.
And know that, right? Listening doesn't mean I agree, doesn't mean I see it the same
Yeah.
way, doesn't mean I want the same thing. It means I care and you matter. And then from that place, knowing that I'll give you, create the space, hold place, that space for you, then we'll switch and go the other way. So we both get to have the floor. We both get to have that empathic sounding board in that space.
Well, and the two keys here are listening, but also being able to speak in a way that actually works. And
Right.
what we found is when the conditions are right, when I know I'm not going to be unfairly attacked, when there is time set aside, there's a set of conditions that are necessary to listen well. But when they're present, just about everybody can listen with an extraordinary degree of receptivity. Like
Mhm.
people can do that. The other side of the coin, being able to ask for what I want and need in a way that would tend to evoke agreement and empathy rather than resistance. People are terrible at that. It's just universal. People are so bad at it. Like it's like the way we go about asking for things is almost perfectly designed to annoy and antagonize the person we're making the request of.
Mhm.
So that's a tragedy. And a lot of what we do is really unpacking that. Like, why is that? And what do we need to do differently in order to have a good, there's never any guarantee my partner will agree, but certainly if I ask for something from an aggrieved point of view, it's almost guaranteed they won't agree. So, you know, teaching people how to give themselves a good shot at speaking in their own behalf.
Well, and while we teach them principles of using I statements and confiding, in a moment of upset, none of that's going to land. So we have very practical. It's one of our main tools called the empathy spiral. And there's a sentence of 13 sentence stems for the speaker that helps the speaker express what we need to say in a way that's fair, that's productive, that really makes their partner want to listen, allows us to take responsibility for the what's going on for us, uncover our assumptions, and being able to make a positive request for change. And it's not fair to complain without making a request for change. It's not fair to say what's not working unless we're going to bring a solution. um, so that helps. So people don't have to have just tons of skill to be able to do this. We just sit down and follow the 13 steps, taking turns, and it's amazing how people can take the most difficult issue they've never been able to unpack and walk away with understanding for each other. And then from there, there's the goodwill and the generosity to come to good solutions, because otherwise we try to solve it without that empathy and understanding, and we don't have the connection.
Mhm.
um
Including us. It works for us too.
that's the key. That's what made the difference for us.
Mm.
And part of that is unpacking what we call our emotional allergies. And so, that's short term, shorthand for transference, just the ways that we are replaying all of our past hurts about love and attachment and connection, with our partner, and the way I superimpose on him all these people and
Well, and you
experiences.
address that so eloquently when you discuss that the breakdown that you had and how you both really met that moment and got to a different place. What's the term you used?
Oh, shamanic death.
Shamanic death.
Yeah.
Yes, the podcast on shamanic death. Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing there too is, kind of what we were touching on in the beginning with that big grief experience. This is where stability and structure is so helpful to, the masculine banks are so helpful to allow the feminine energy to find safety
Mhm.
and right place.
Mhm.
And that's what I really gather from what you're sharing. And this is, tools that we live by also is,
Mhm.
yeah, let's learn how to take responsibility of how we're delivering what's coming out. Let's have a structure and a practice, a sacred practice of learning the structure and abiding by the rules of the structure so we can actually share our heart in a way that's not just spilling everywhere and like, this is what I'm feeling and you have to deal with it. It's like, how do we deliver it in a respectful way to really understand the other person?
Mhm.
And then, where we really get to teach each other how to like teach the other how to love us.
Mhm.
And this is how we speak to it. And that's what I hear there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
you say that. It's our job to teach people around us how to love us. He's
Mhm.
not going to know
Yes.
what I need, but he's not going to listen if I just come at him with blame and attack
Yeah.
and vague
Yeah.
grievances. Yeah.
And that's
Well,
just the
so
wisdom of our brains, just to name this piece for everyone listening. It's like, if we're in the part that's reactive, our brain is in full fire, sending signals, stories, experiences, remembering all the visceral, like, I remember when they did this and this and this and this and this, to, self protect, to defend, and like, yay, brain.
Mhm.
And so now it's learning the wisdom of the brain to come out of the adaptive child, coming into the prefrontal cortex, which is the wise adult.
Mhm.
Like, let's
Exactly.
navigate this with some maturity, with some care.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you
And
may have to take a break before you can come back and do that.
Yes.
Usually we do. We're not going to do it in the
Yes.
middle. People, we can write it out in advance, but then, yeah, then there's this trust that we can work through anything
Mhm.
when we can approach it in that way.
Yeah, and just circling back a little bit, because I think this is an important piece where you're a therapist, right? And that you were speaking to Michael about that place where, she'd come home with all these ideas that she would tell you, to do. And I just want to speak to that. I'm also a therapist, and this is something I see show up a lot for our clients where, yeah, we can, with the best intentions, not maybe we have an idea, we have an expectation, or we're going to teach and guide the other person, and we really see
Mm.
this with mothers. This can show up a lot, like just that blanket belief, like the dad is misattuning, he doesn't know, and I'm going to explain to him what he doesn't know. And the second we come in with that, it's not going to go well. And like, coming in with this curiosity, I've been speaking to it as, what if I just always assume that Mike can see something that I can't, that he actually has wisdom and insight that I can't see. And if I always approach it that way and can get curious, then I actually get to get the gold. And I've really found that as we've gotten better and better at hearing each other, every time we have one of those conversations, I learned so much about Mike. And not only do I learn a lot about him, but I'm like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. Or it opens me, like blasts me open into a whole different way. Not that we do it his way, but it opens this space of possibility and insight. And there's always a third thing that emerges, like a third, that gets birthed through it, that we cannot do if there's not room for both of us first to just be heard and understood. And then that's the creativity, right? Like that's where the creativity happens, which is the whole point to us being together. But yeah, the ground, the space, the asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
once there's that goodwill and generosity on board, then we can really brainstorm and collaborate and come up
Yeah.
with something far better than either one of us as individuals.
and
Yeah.
tone's a really big part of it. I notice Robin, being a therapist, typically the words she uses are really spot on,
Uh,
like well crafted, accurate, fair, but that's not always congruent with the tone. And
yeah, I'm good at that. I can say all the things, and then it's like,
so,
the way you're saying it.
It's like I'm
so
not getting it. It's
yeah,
just
the coaching I've given Robin in this regard is just think of me like a dog. If you come at me with bad dog, bad dog, what you're going to get is
Yeah.
right. But you come at me with good dog, then I'll pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's just an easy way to keep their tone in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
important.
safety's so important. Like, it's how I look at it is it's really honoring the nervous system. It's honoring the mammal, the animal part of us that is
Mhm.
always tracking for, you named it, Michael, survival. And so let's care about that and be allies for each other to soothe the nervous system part, to actually allow the wise part, the spirit part to come in and take up more space in the body. That's how I see it.
Mhm.
And what I'd love
Mhm.
to hear, just in the honor of time, we could go into these, more tools. And I'd love to hear, God, we have this privilege of sitting with you two who've journeyed for 30 years. I'd love to hear and feel in all of the journeys and all the teachings and practicing the tools, like, what's the essence of your relationship today? What does it look like at this phase of the relationship? What are the things that really help you thrive in the felt sense of connection, in the
Mm.
intimacy? You know, what does that look like behind closed doors? If we could go in and see what you've developed, evolved into, if you yeah, we'd love to hear what that looks like. What does that let us into your world there of what allows it to work so well?
I start. Let me start.
I'm feeling like these tears come up just as you ask that because I'm just like overcome with gratitude that we made we made it through all those places where it seemed like it wasn't going to work
Mm.
to get to this what we have now. And I give a huge bunch of that credit to you
Mm,
for the work you've done. Um,
mm.
so to feel as loved and cherished as I do. So I don't know. Yeah, why don't you start?
Well, phew, there's a lot of different directions I could go with that question. Um, we were about 7 years into our actual marriage when I was working with a woman who's very charismatic and very powerful woman. I was really attracted to her, and started to fall into an emotional infatuation. And it
Mm.
was a little bit of a red flag. I'm like, So it was clear to me I needed to have a conversation with Robin. And so one thing led to the next, and we realized, wow, this marriage that we're in, that we've been in for 7 years, got started in a moment of tragedy.
Yeah, we had like this trauma bond.
Yes,
It
Yeah.
was,
right. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. Let's pull out our vows from the wedding and see how we're doing. And we pulled the vows out, and there were a bunch of them that really we were really handling. We were really on top of. And then there were a number of others that really we had not accomplished at all. Uh, and it was like, oh, well, that's a wake up call. So we didn't do this officially or legally, but between us, we agreed we're going to end that marriage.
And we got unmarried.
We're getting
Like that
unmarried,
started with younger selves in a situation where we were kind of just clinging to each other. We need to start all over again, knowing
start all over.
who we really are now.
And the criteria we decided for getting married again was, can we get to a place where neither of us has chronic grievances about the other one? Like that state, like, yeah, I love you. And boy, there's this whole little aspect of you that, I really don't
Don't like.
appreciate. I don't like, I love you, but I don't like you anymore in this way. And let's make that our mission. And we didn't actually do the ceremony for logistical reasons, but on our 30th anniversary, last July 4th, we both realized, wow, uh, I can actually say that I'm there. It's not that Robin doesn't bother me or annoy me, and I'm sure that will never go away. but I don't have any like, there's no aspect of her that I'm going like, yeah, I love her, but boy, that thing, ooh, you know, I honestly can say, and it's taken 30 years.
Yeah, it wasn't. Like it's been on a, monthly, annual basis ever since. We're just like constantly on the growth curve to see how can we make sure that things are getting better and better.
Well, and I'll give one specific example. One of our big differences is around picking up around the house. I like to know where everything is and, just have everything be very aesthetic, and that's my ideal. And Robin, I can usually tell where she's been in the house because there's a little pile of stuff where she was doing whatever she was doing. And
That's
so,
me too. I'm that person.
oh, this was just a chronic upset for me. That, yeah, just a source of irritation. The extent to which my day is occupied with picking up Robin's stuff. And it was a few years ago. I'm in the middle of like, oh, here's a pile of shoes or something in some weird place. And, I'm just like, ah. And I just paused and I had an epiphany, which, first of all, it occurred to me how much Robin does for us.
Mm.
Like, it's not like she's not a contributor, right? And in fact, the fact that she left that pile of crap there probably has to do with the fact that she's busy doing something else for us that feels more important to her than picking that stuff up. And here's my other epiphany is this isn't going to change. like like the odds that Robin is going to get this personality shift I've been looking for and be more like me, it's just not going to
I
happen.
keep trying,
It's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm permanently sure, but a wholesale personality change, no way.
Yeah.
So maybe the thing for me to do is accept and embrace that picking up after Robin is part of my job description in this relationship. And every time I'm picking up a little pile of her stuff, it's just an opportunity for me to appreciate and be grateful for all the stuff that she does for us. And so that's just one example of unpacking a chronic grievance. And, there's been a lot of those. And so it's great to, unlike in years past, I spend very little time having fast thoughts in my head, arguing with Robin about whatever. That part of my brain has mostly gone dormant. And it's really great for me and for you.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Oh, go ahead, Robin.
the other thing I think that came out of that redo 7 years ago was about,
7 years in.
7 years in,
Yeah.
23 years ago, was about you, and follow up to that too, but you saying that you realize that, um, in order for the passion and intimacy to remain the way we want it between us, that we have to attend to keeping that fire really stoked here. So we're not looking outside the relationship
Well,
directly or indirectly,
well,
for a need for those key needs.
I'd say background on that is Robin made it clear right from the start that monogamy was the deal. And that if I wanted to be with somebody else, that's fine, but I couldn't be under the same roof as her. Your choice, cowboy. And so I embrace that as a rule. That's one of my rules. And the truth is, I mostly have never, in my heart of hearts or my proclivities, I just don't feel like a monogamous person. It's not my impulse. So I obeyed the rule. But it wasn't just the example I mentioned. It's also I'm a dancer. I am engaged in, amazing, emotional, beautiful, even erotic experiences with other people. And I realized that, in fact, I was in conversation with some people about is there's a lack of congruency between my authentic self-expression and the way I'm following this rule.
Mm.
And it's a problem. So I sat down with Rob, and this is part of the conversation, like, okay, I need to change this. I need to ask you, I don't want to have this rule anymore. I want to be able to engage with any other human I encounter in whatever way feels authentic. No rules. And I don't want to mess this thing up that we've got. So the only way I can see that working is if we are mindful that what we have together is so hot and so passionate and so compelling that that's my guide star, not a rule,
Mhm.
but just like in any given moment, whatever's going on with another human, this is where I
Mhm.
want the sex. I want it with her because that's where it's hottest. That's where it burns brightest.
Mm.
And that was really, really helpful for me. For the first time, I was able to feel both. I was able to feel free and monogamous at the
Mhm.
same time,
Mm.
rather than trapped by monogamy.
Mhm.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that you're speaking to Michael, because what we've found is, when there's that resistance trying to push that part away, it get almost the shadow gets bigger.
Mhm.
And so what I'm hearing there is just bringing the authentic self to the table and then recommitting and devoting to the relationship and stoking the fire. And there's honor in that and there's beauty in that. And Courtney and I so get that. We had it reminds me of one of our episodes. We had a beautiful guest on, Mel,
Mm.
and we were exploring this terrain where Courtney and I were having the aha moment of like we are sexually monogamous but emotionally polyamorous. Like
Mm.
we need to be able to connect with other humans deeply, but let's stoke this fire. Let's
Mhm.
stoke the charge. Let's welcome the differences. Let's do these sacred practices that, we speak about. And that keeps all the interest here,
Mhm.
not because we have to,
Mm.
not be, to abandon some part of self, but it bit out of the juice and the fire and the beauty that comes from doing that. And maybe just as we're closing here, I'd love to hear what stokes your fire? Like what
Mm.
keeps you guys 30 years in at the phase that you're in? What keeps that fire hot?
Well, I have to say that partly because of that commitment too, that Michael's really, you've always insisted on us having the time together to deeply connect, uh, romance and adoring qualities that you bring to me
Mm,
throughout the day, throughout the week. It's like that's he's calling me back to that constantly.
mm,
And because I'm the one who gets very busy doing other things and has a lot of forward focused visions for us. And he's the one who says, now this moment matters. None of that matters if we don't have each time together now. so, um, so, and my promise is when he says that to say yes, 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 you're right. We matter, and we have a lot more room for that than we did when we were raising all these kids.
Mhm.
And
But I think the other thing is that um, there's so much more awareness now that our time is precious, and we don't know how long we get to have, and so keeping that. So what stokes our fire is is having fun together. I think, just having fun together, creating quality time together, sensual time together, but also uh teaching together is a wonderful way to keep growing. The creativity we share as business partners is really exciting.
Mm.
Or you-
Here's what I would say. Um, we're having better sex than we've ever had.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Oh,
becoming masters with each other.
now we don't have sex as often as we used to, but I would say in terms of total minutes, it's not that different. We're just being more thorough these days. So,
Uh-huh.
it's like anything that you practice over time, you
Mhm.
should be getting better at it, right?
Mhm.
And so I love that about Robin, that her receptivity and her openness to just going all the way with feeling everything we can feel uh, in terms of our uh, the combination of physical and emotional connection that we have. Um,
an ever increasing emotional depth, I think, in the um, in the lovemaking. It
well,
keeps
and
changing.
and I guess I would just add, we've always had fiery passion for each other, but when we were a lot more conflictual, a lot of those conflicts were being worked out in the sex.
Mhm.
And now I don't know how to say this, but it's kind of like the sex is more just about the sex rather than all the other stuff. And that's been an upgrade. And it's all been great. Even when we were fighting through sex, that was great too. But I like this part better.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
not bringing all this other stuff. We're just being able to be with each other and the pleasure of having these moments together.
I would echo what Robin said about working together, having a creative thing to do together. I know you two share that. Uh, and, we've gone from being pretty conflictual around working together to a point now where I know anytime Robin opens her mouth in a leadership role that something great's going to happen. I have 100% confidence in that. And I feel so blessed to be able to work with someone I feel that way about. Is amazing. It's extraordinary. So that's a big thing. Just the creativity and the fun of that, and the respect I have for her. Um, and the last thing is our grandkids. Uh, and we have 7 grandchildren, and they're all incredibly different. And I just think they're the best thing ever.
Our
And
combined devotion to being there for them. It's been really fun.
yeah, and um, it gives a different perspective on being old. Uh, um, we have friends who didn't have kids, and they had much better vacations and better toys than we did, and a lot more free time. And that was painful sometimes when we were younger. And, we look at them now and, they have good lives, but man, the richness we have
Mm.
from this enduring legacy with these wonderful people um, who love us and feel nurtured and supported by us. It's such a privilege to be.
And need us, like really depend on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway,
Yeah, beautiful.
Obviously, we have a lot to say, so we'll
Yeah.
put
Thank
it
you
down.
for sharing all of it. And just, what really stands out for me is letting us feel you, and like the depth that's been created over time, the language that I would use here. I'm like, whoa, thank you for doing and walking and practicing the art of sacred relationship, where the words that I would put here and witnessing you is where you've allowed each other to be, where you're allowing yourself to be initiated by your partner into, how do I want to show up here, like what could I improve on, where in a way that leads to deeper connection. And getting to feel your heart there at the end there, Michael, when you were expressing just the beauty of witnessing Robin in the work, when you guys are in service to others, you getting to witness the mastery that's there and watching the feminine share that, and where that, from my lens, this is my words, if I miss a tuning, tell me, but where that then peels your heart open. And this is what I've been amazed by in this journey of like sacred relationship is, how do we like create the safety for the feminine to blossom and open through praise, so that the masculine can drop all the defense mechanisms around his heart and move from here down to here, and where that dance gets to just keep happening, like back and forth.
Mm.
And just
Mhm.
thank you, thanks for letting us witness your relationship and just bringing your wisdom and your teachings and your energy. And is there anything you want to add there?
Mhm.
Yeah, just it's nice to feel you in this other phase of the journey, and to feel, yeah, all the different initiations you move through. And it's kind of interesting too to notice the similarities in terms of I'm also a
Yeah.
therapist, and Mike was a plumber, who had done a lot of personal work, but sort of that similar kind of, showing up with different ingredients, different histories, and ways that we've shown up into the work, which is kind of cool too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I have just maybe a little afterthought to share about what you were just saying, Mike. In a lot of ways, he's the one who brings the feminine uh, into our relationship, and I bring a lot of the masculine as well. Like we in
Yeah.
different domains,
Mhm.
we flip,
Yeah.
and he counterbalances me, and often leads me back into my heart. um,
Mhm.
and I really love that about our relationship. There's like deeply, intensely male, masculine, drive and focus, and then there's ways where he's the poet. He's the the person who can hold the complexities much more openly emotionally, and I'm deeply drawn to that too. So we have both. We have it all, lots of different mix-ups that we balance each other, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful.
And I'm really glad you spoke to that, because that's such an important piece where it's not attached to gender. And I'd say we experience that also. I'm a very sensitive man. Lots of feminine qualities where we get to just wave and experience both sides. Like there's times in it, where it's like Courtney's maybe more masculine, maybe I'm more feminine, and where that gets to wave back and forth. And
Mhm.
what I found
Mhm.
is that's the initiation where all of us gets to be here and in the appropriate timing
Mhm.
that's helpful to the whole.
Mhm.
Yeah, we keep calling each other back to how we
Yeah.
bring them all together.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Mhm.
thank
Yeah,
you.
so nice to feel you
Mhm.
both.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
nice
and
to
then
be.
yeah, and then just in closing, we'll put it down. Anyone listening, it'll be in the show notes, but links of where people can find you, find more of your work. You want to plug that here?
Hmm.
Well, on our website, they'll find a free relationship health quiz
Mhm.
that basically is measuring uh, 6 key dimensions of love. And I think folks will find that interesting. And then you get a whole personalized report. And also, we offer a 2 hour introduction to true love, which introduces our work. You learn two crucial tools, for one of them being an effective gratitude practice. Um,
The other one
and
being on how to make requests in ways that really can turn out and save a lot of resistance from and create more harmony at home.
lastly, there's a link there called PQ, which is a whole system I train people in positive intelligence. So if you really want to upgrade your relationship and your partner's unwilling to
Or
do that
unavailable
or unavailable to do that with you, this is something you can do unilaterally on your own to dramatically improve your relationship.
for your nervous
Oh,
system. Yeah,
oh, cool.
Beautiful.
fast.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh,
All
so
the
many
best.
blessings for you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
If you got some value out of this episode, our ask is please go give this a 5-star rating review. It really allows this podcast to reach new couples so they too can deepen the felt sense of intimacy in their relationship, and so that our community can grow. The more of us couples that are sitting around in circle together having these conversations, it makes this world a juicier place to be. That would be so meaningful to us. And thank you once again for tuning in.